I have two introductions to make today. First is my new jingle. I recently did a podcast with Omish Njash, a writer and singer-songwriter from Kenya, who I commissioned to make me a jingle in the traditional form of his people and to mix English and Luo both into the jingle using traditional instruments. The result is this sublime piece. Thank you, Omish, and your studio for making it happen.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro etu under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye etu under mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji etu under mic. Wola wachokre wabed piny bi wawinje ero chako Dung omit ndi and a mic podcast makende.
In this episode, Lilek and I talk more specifically about issues of identity and how identity crises can be addressed by applying simple exercises and tackling simple questions. The exercises and questions are simple, the answers and results can be everything but. Some of the thoughts that came out of our talk hit me because what may at first seem oddly counterintuitive may strike exactly at the heart of the matter. Lilek speaks about communities and her own experiences in Plum Village, not Valley, and so the question arises, if we are talking about individual identity, how does an entire community assist in strengthening this concept of the self? Am I myself for me, or am I me for others? Do I exist to express my inner self, or do I exercise the expression of an outer self others expect from me? This is only a small part of our talk today, but if you have questions of identity, talk about it with people you know and love and support. The worst thing we can do in times of perceived weakness is try to hide that weakness. In reality, that weakness may be an opening towards a greater reality. We just need to open it. As always, Lilek, thank you very much for your time and insightful thoughts. I'm joined by Lilek for a fifth time, which is fantastic. How are you, Lilek?
Good. I'm happy to talk to you and really, curious about where it's going today.
Yeah, it is a bit crazy. Even in our pre-podcast conversation, we meandered through the countryside of identity, and it was that was interesting. I wish I should have recorded that as well. But before we get to the topic, though, we met again not so long ago to participate in this quite large, I think 25,000 strong Fridays for Future general demonstration, as it was in Berlin. Any thoughts on that event?
Well, it was larger than we had expected, not as large as it should be. And I think me included, but also the other Earth holders, because you joined the Earth holders, which was really nice because it's nice to connect the worlds and people and just to, see each other face to face. But we thought it was quite noisy. We all felt it was really, really noisy. And we've been to other demonstrations before. Why are you laughing? It's really funny. I don't know. Yeah. It seemed noisier than any other demonstration before.
I know. I find it funny because for me, demonstrations, I've always participated in kind of noisy demonstrations. But I just thought, because I remember our walk that we did, the
deep time walk,
and that's like a silent walk. And so therefore, I think, do the Earth holders do everything in silence? But clearly not. But
we just participated in another demonstration in Hanover because one of the Earth holders lives in Hanover, and she founded the Earth Holders Hanover. She founded them, and so she comes to Berlin regularly, and she invited us to come to Hanover because there's a big thing going on about a road being built or broadened, and of course nature has to vanish, will be destroyed, whatever. So and in that demonstration, she said, okay, we'll be the mindful block or the mindfulness block at the end, and we will be in silence, which worked more or less because she was meeting people and talking to them, but it was quite relaxed and quite silent, and so that was our conclusion from the experience that we had with the Fridays for Future demo.
Sure. No, I get it. And I don't really like too much crazy noise happening around me because first of all, I can't focus on what people say to me because I can't hear anything if there's background noise. And then also if there's a lot of noise, then I get a headache. But for some reason, I kind of welcomed the noise. I found there were a lot of young people. There were lots of interesting chants. I think some of the chants are quite humorous. I don't know. I find it quite amusing because they said, like, give me a whatever, and they spelled out the name of a fossil fuel company, and they said, well, what does that spell? And the answer was shit. And I thought that was quite amusing.
Yeah. That's quite humorous, quite nice.
Yeah.
No, I'm not against it, and I think those Fridays for Future demos, they're not aggressive or something, right? But at the same time, there's so much noise going on in the city, and then you're in the middle of it, and sometimes there's just too much going on, let's say. And I think we have to have both. It is really great to have a silent walk or a walking meditation, which we do regularly, like also in the heart of Berlin. And then to have a demo with a good vibe, but also a strong vibe and political statements. I think that's really something that also has the right or the need to be there. And at the same time, in our society, we have so much noise going on inside and outside. So we actually need more silence and we need more concentration. So I think we need more of the other one without saying that the noisy one or the more outward going one is obsolete.
No, I get that, of course. And what's also quite interesting, as I kind of, and you've definitely helped me on this path of sort of self-education, as it were. So you've when we first met, I thought I was meeting this Polish dude who's going to tell me about Extinction Rebellion, and in fact, I met Lilek from Earth Holders, and telling me completely different things. But you know, we kind of got into a bit more of the detail of. And I keep getting this wrong. It's Plum Valley, right? Not Plum Village. It's Plum Valley.
It's Plum Village, actually.
It's Plum Village. Why do I keep saying Plum? Is there a valley somewhere nearby?
There are many vineyards, not valley. Plum Vineyard.
Okay, Plum
But
Village.
We don't drink wine there. You know, we're surrounded by wine, but it's a non-alcohol policy, of course, because you want to keep your mind fresh and clean or clear.
Yeah,
yes.
Of course. Okay, it is Plum Village. Then why do I keep saying Valley? I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, okay, Plum Village, and that kind of further, pushed the door open towards trying to understand some of the Buddhist, and through that also yoga. For me, at least, was a point of interest, and I've been reading up on these things, and the art of meditation. So you also talk about meditative walks. So therefore, the meditative walk, silence, enables an individual to channel their thoughts inward, if I'm not mistaken, and to be able to kind of assess where they are sort of spiritually, physically. One book that I read, the author said that because our sort of hectic lives are they kind of develop imbalances within us, and we don't often understand what our bodies are telling us. And if you sit down and you try to engage in silent meditation, you actually start to feel pains in your body. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I mean. There is this kind of inward investigation, understanding who we are, sort of recreating the connection between mind and body. And this is this also perhaps the difference between one side, the meditation in silence, we all understand who we are, what we are doing, what our purpose is, whereas the Fridays for Future is a kind of external communication of a collective wish. Can I make that generalization?
No, of course you can't. But in a way, it's going maybe in the right direction. The thing is that, like, the art is to stay connected with yourself while engaging with the so-called outer world. And I think the problem is more that we lose this connection. We lose connection with ourselves because we get lost in the sensations and in the stimuli that we receive and that we process. And for example, in a demonstration, of course, it is even harder because there's so much going on, and you need more concentration, you need more focus, you need more anchoring. And this is what you can practice when you do meditation in a more silent space and with people who are experienced. So you can collectively create a field of concentration and consciousness. And if you see, well, when you see videos of Thich Nhat Hanh, or didn't have the chance to meet him, but doing a walking meditation with this person, what was just incredible, because his concentration was so strong. He was so rooted in himself and in the present moment that that people could like tap into that concentration and just be in that field. And this is, of course, the fruit of years of practice. But this is also why you need to be silent and still from time to time to be able to recreate that also in more difficult conditions. And of course, this is why there is a big focus on the Sangha, on the community, because we need a community of practitioners who are also mindful or trying to be mindful and who can practice together. And that doesn't have to be a religious tradition. For me, that's a spiritual practice. And you can do that just sitting silently at the table, drinking coffee and just enjoying each other's presence, right? And enjoying your breathing. And sometimes it's better not to talk, because in this way you can be connected with yourself and with the other person. You don't lose yourself in talking and conversations or whatever. And I think we can have more balance in that, in having like silent times and solo times where we are by ourselves or with ourselves, and then community times or partner times or whatever, right? And so it is our goal to stay rooted in the present moment and in ourselves, even when going to such a demonstration. And this way you can be outside and inside at the same time, but it will be different. Your actions will be different. Your manners will be different, right?
Yeah, completely. And what I often find, I love the fact that you kind of slap me down when my mind takes on this ridiculously creative element and starts to push my own ideas into a 4,000-year-old tradition. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's survived for a reason. Yeah. So one point to refer back to kind of what you were saying earlier, but also because it was presented in this book too. So Buddhism, or at least the Buddhist teachings that I read about, they don't push people towards Buddhism. As in, if you go and do yoga, or if you do spiritual yoga, or if you go to a meditation session with a community, you don't suddenly have to change religion, become a Buddhist. As in, the spirituality doesn't necessarily have to follow a specific religious doctrine. You can have any kind of belief or no belief. It doesn't matter. Did I understand that correctly?
what I found and still find very attractive about the Buddha's teachings was and is that he said, or in the writings it says that he said, "Ehi passiko, come and see for yourself." You have to come, listen to the teachings, and then put them into practice. And there you can prove them. You can see if they work for you. And of course, not everything works for the same person. That's what you said before we started, right? I think that we have to have different approaches because people's minds are so different. So the Buddha taught in very, very different ways so that he could reach many different people and different minds and mindsets. And I loved it that it was, in a way, it's very scientific. You have to find proofs for yourself within yourself, and you have to train your mind. And we know now with brain science that we can, right? That we have a lot of fluidity, a lot of plasticity in our brains, and that we can use that, and that meditation changes our brain structure, the way that our neurons fire and connect and whatever. So this I found very modern, extremely modern, and that attracted me because also it was not only a very structured way of teaching or of putting things and explaining things, but it also included the heart. You have also a lot of practice or teachings about compassion and about living together in community and communicating and whatever. And this is also an emphasis of Thich Nhat Hanh, for example. He founded this community Plum Village because he wanted mindfulness to be engaged and applied. This is why it's called applied Buddhism. And he said, to refer to what you said earlier, he said, you don't have to become a Buddhist. You can practice mindfulness and it can make you a better Christian. Or people came to him and said, Tai, do I have to give up my Christian faith to practice here? And he said, no, of course not. And you can use the church bell as a mindfulness bell. You can use the rituals that you already have, that you're connected with and that come from your ancestors, your roots, your spiritual roots. You can use them or you can practice them and just be more mindful. This is the whole thing. This is the spirit. And so this is what I love, that mindfulness in a way is very secular because it can be applied. It is just a way of being mindful of and also being alert, concentrated. You can do that with everything.
Yeah. The sheer depth and volume of material that there is for traditional Buddhist teachings, but also these practices. And I can only imagine that with the applied Buddhism that you talk about from Plum Village, I mean, there is some kind of scripture, is there, that has been laid down, or there are books that have been presented by your guru?
Yeah, I don't call him guru. Yeah, my teacher. Tai means teacher. Guru is more of a Hindi, a yogic way of saying, but it's my teacher. Yeah, of course, he wrote many books, or let's say he wrote some books and then he gave many talks, and his disciples, like the monks and nuns, they compiled the talks and they made books out of the talks. But in a way, it is a Zen tradition, and Zen was actually a very rebellious stream within the Buddhist tradition, because they said, we don't need scriptures. We don't need to have text. We need enlightenment in the present moment. And all we need is already there in the present moment. There is nothing to attain. There is nothing to run after. If you run after enlightenment, you will be as unenlightened as ever, because you always run after something. You can never attain it in the present moment if your mind is directed towards the future. And so Zen started out without all of those scriptures. And of course, now there are many, after hundreds of years, we have Zen teachings and also books. but it's not like the Pali Canon or like the traditional Buddhist texts, which, by the way, Thich Nhat Hanh refers to, and he read them, and he was a very big scholar too. But Zen in itself is very much, it's now. Everything is now, and this is also what I like. It's very fresh and you always have the opportunity and also the duty in a way to come back to the present moment if you want to live your life to the fullest.
Yeah, this is something which we've commented upon. You've spoken about, excuse me, mindfulness before, and so the moment, and I also read about it in this book, being in the moment. I want to talk about this more, but I think I'm not aware enough fully of the concept because I have this practicality limitation, being in the moment and yet still making plans for next week and so on. And yeah, so I need to address my kind of limitations on understanding this exactly like in the proper manner. And then we can come back and talk about it. Is that all right?
I think you're the only person on this planet with this problem. No one else thinks about making lists and what to do next week, what to eat for breakfast when they sit in meditation.
I like to be.
No, but let me tell you what I love. Another thing that I love about Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching is that he says we don't have to be full-time Buddha, like the fully enlightened person. We can all be part-time Buddhas. Every time we're mindful, every time we're aware, we're present, we are a Buddha in a way, right? We have the mind fully in the present moment, and even if it's only for a second. So it is enough to be a part-time Buddha. And it is also nothing that you attain once and for all, and it doesn't go away, or like enlightenment is not something solid. It is fluid, and it has to be sustained. He also said the Buddha, and this is revolutionary, the Buddha had to practice too. He had to be mindful, to stay aware. And so mindfulness never ends. And even if you only take one mindful breath, you're more mindful than before, or in this moment you're mindful, right? And this is maybe something that we can practice it right now, right? And you don't have to be more advanced or whatever to understand or to practice, let's say.
Okay. All right. So how would we practice that now that you've set up this challenge?
Well, you can close your eyes.
Okay.
Become aware of your feet and your buttocks that touch the chair.
Yeah.
And feel your breath. And be aware that we are alive in this moment because we're breathing and we're sensing. And this present moment is a wonderful moment.
Yeah, I can do this because I've done a bit of yoga now. So therefore, but I tell you what, about a year ago, if you'd asked me to close my eyes, breathe and feel my buttocks, I would have completely fallen off the chair laughing. But I kind of learned how to breathe this year or the end of last year, or relearned how to breathe, as it were, because before breathing was just an involuntary function of my anatomy, whereas if you want to improve your fitness, if you want to energize your body, if you want to be able to focus, learning how to breathe properly can really just increase your abilities and your awareness in amazing ways I just never had thought of before. So I'm getting there, Lilek.
It's a practice, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many more questions I would ask, but that's not what we were that's not what we were supposed to talk about. But anyway, we were there, so I'm enjoying the moment. I'm aware of that. Identity. Yeah. So I've had a lot of talks in the last few months. This is something that I've struggled with other people more than me. I've had lots of people come up to me in my life, and they say, "Man, I don't know who I am. I don't know if I'm this, if I'm that, if I'm so on and you know, and on the other, in different ways, people have always come up to me and said, "Zach, you seem like such a confident person," and so on. I've always said I'm not confident in this crazy way that people might think. It's just that I feel comfortable with who I am. I've never really had an identity crisis, but lots and lots of people do. And I find that quite interesting because it also plays a very key part in some of the things that I've read about yoga and Buddhism. Who are we? Who am I? Are these issues that you've addressed yourself and are completely at ease with, and therefore is this like a part of the process that everybody has to encounter?
Well, those were many questions. Which one should I ask first?
Just pick them out. Pick them out. You do what you do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've been through some identity crisis. I think I'm looking for my way right now for the last months. And I think the question is also how to deal with that. And for example, meditation helps you to be with what is there, even though it might be very uncomfortable and you might not want to experience that, but it is what is there in the moment. And if you can make space for that, then you can also go through it. And you can accept that you don't know who the hell you are at the moment. And this is just where you're at. And you might have some confidence in finding your way if you just continue your practice. And like, this is something that the monks and nuns say, no matter where you're at in your life, just continue the practice. It is not a problem when you're on the path of practice. It's not a problem when you stop or when you go back. The problem is when you leave the path. As long as you're on the path, you can never completely lose it, right? And so sometimes you're on the path, you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you are, if you're in a forest or in a valley or wherever, but you know that you have the path, you have the practice, and that's your anchor. So I think that this is maybe the difference between a practitioner and a non-practitioner. And of course, you have the community that helps you also. That is part of your identity, right? And at the same time, this topic is so vast, but I can maybe talk briefly about my own experience. I lived in Plum Village for 7-8 months, and I experienced what it means to not identify so much as an individual. I mean, you have to know also who you are as a monk or a nun, but at the same time, it is not so important what you achieve and how great you are and whatever, but also what you do for the community. And you can always rely on the community as much as the community relies on you. So it's a vice versa process, because we inter-are. I talked about that last time, I think. Yeah. And this inter-being you really experience when you live with 6 other people in a room, and you practice with 200 people in the dining hall, eating in silence, walking outside in silence. So in a way, it helps you to really come back to yourself, because you are in silence, you're with yourself. That's just what I said about the demonstration thing. But at the same time, you're always also surrounded by people, and it's not important what you wear or how you look, but what's important is your heart and what you bring to the table, like how you contribute to the community. So when I came back to my very, very individualistic and also in a way lonely life, sounds so pitiful, but like in Berlin, there are many, many people living alone, or also because it's such a big city, you don't have a group of friends that meets every day, like in a village or whatever, it's just more scattered. And so conveying this experience to my friends and family, I found that very difficult because people may sometimes said, "What? You cannot wear skirts?" One of my friends, she's a little rebellious, and I love that. But I said, "Yeah, and you don't wear skirts that are too short or whatever, things that show your bosom because of respect." What? I don't allow anyone to tell me what to wear and what not to wear. And I was like, yeah, okay. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to live, that you have to experience, and that is very hard to convey as an experience. Also, how identity can be the non-self. It's not only about myself, it's about my ancestors, it's about everything that came together to make this person that I am today, and being aware of that I'm functioning as an individual, but at the same time, I'm surrounded by elements that I don't have control over, that are unknown to me, and all of my ancestors that I don't know, and this is also something that is my identity, but it's my larger self. And this notion of the larger self, you get very clearly when you live in a community. Maybe not only Plum Village, but this was my experience.
Yeah, in reading this book and again listening to some of the things that you said, some of the things that other people have talked about, but this book as well, this a Western, shall we say, psychologist or psychiatrist lived for, I think, 8 or 9 years in a community. I don't know how. If somebody says to me now, Zach, would you like to go and live in this community for 6 or 7 months? I'm like, okay, in that, I'm who's going to pay the bills? So this kind of, I can't necessarily automatically relate to that kind of decision, although I think it would be a fantastic thing to be able to do. Obviously, there are like temples where you can go to for just an evening and share in a sense of community, and that doesn't require this huge sacrifice. But from what I read, basically what you just said as well, it's exactly that. There wasn't only the case that the teachers would communicate with the practitioners, because it wasn't always necessary. Different people pick up things at different speeds, and so therefore, if I'm there with somebody for the first time, the other person would perhaps learn a certain principle more quickly than I would notice that I'm struggling, and it is the way of the community that the people would then themselves come and help. That I wouldn't necessarily have to go to a teacher, or that the teacher wouldn't necessarily be the first person to notice that I was struggling, but the other people that are in it. And as you said, you're on the path together. And the best way to stay on the path, not reaching a destination, is to help people along the way. So I find this sense of community, this strong connection between practitioners to be very healthy.
I was just thinking of a quote that I think the Buddha said to his disciple Ananda. He was his cousin and his best friend, but at the same time his assistant, his attendant. And he said something like, Ananda, spiritual friends make half of the path, or the wealth that we have and the riches that we have. And then I think he thought for a moment and he said, no, it's not true, Ananda. They make 100%. Like without spiritual friends, it's very, very difficult. And spiritual friends can be people from different traditions, from different ages. like just people who support you and who you support, as you said, when you struggle, they know you, they can see it. You can come to them and ask them for support and ask them, who am I? Who the hell am I? What's going on with the world? Why are we here? What's the purpose of the universe? And they might just sit and smile and say, look at the clouds. Does a cloud ask itself, am I part of the sky? Am I a member of the sky? Like, you can very much turn to the natural world too, the so-called natural world, to understand that things just are. And I think this identity thing is very, very human, right? When you look at the Thich Nhat Hanh once was asked, how can I be myself? Or how can I be my best self? Something like that. And he said, like a pine tree is just being a pine tree. It's the best thing that this tree can do, is just being a real pine tree. And we as humans ask ourselves, what the hell does it mean to be a human? Like, I'm born as a human and still I'm asking myself, who am I? Lilek, Zach, the Earth Holders, Plum Valley, whatever. What is this? And in Zen, you just try to see things as they are and just accept what is there, right? If it feels shitty, okay, it just feels shitty. It will go away. If it feels good, nice, it feels good, but it will also go away. And so the thing with identity also in Buddhism is that it's nothing that is not changing, because everything is changing. So your identity is also changing. And the more you cling to an idea of who you are or who you're supposed to be, the more you will suffer, right?
Yeah, this is also a really interesting part of the book. And also a bit about what you just said with your friend, you can't wear a skirt and so on and so forth. And I mean, this is maybe something we can come back to, because I'm always interested in how society and certain beliefs structure themselves, and whether or not it's patriarchal, matriarchal, and so on. But I mean, we could talk about that. Buddhism and feminism, we could talk about this maybe at a later date, because I think it's a really interesting topic. But basically, if I decide to dress in a certain way, am I presenting myself, or am I living up to what I think the external world sees me as being? So, when I do my hair in a certain way, whatever's left of my hair, when I put a hat on, when I wear a certain kind of coat and so on, am I projecting who I really am? Or am I projecting what I want other people to see? Or am I trying to satisfy other people through that?
I don't know, Zach.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that's why, yeah. No, but this is the question that was put in the book. And I found it, for some people, it was important that they had to always appear perfect, regardless of the situation. And we see this also in movies. Okay, I know it's a bit shit to say in movies, but you have certain people, they've just been involved in a fight, and in the next scene, their hair is perfect. They're not sweating at all. They're not, their skin hasn't changed color. There's no difference whatsoever. And we know that just can't be the case. That's just not possible. But it's what has to be projected to people, that a person who is a hero or a heroine who is in control always looks good, and that's crap, right?
I'm just having kind of images in my head right now. Yeah, it is a very intriguing topic, because for me the easiest way to put it is that it doesn't mean just because we don't have an ego, or we don't have in Buddhism, you don't have a soul that is not changing, because everything is changing. But it doesn't mean that you're not there. You are there. But it means you have a certain form which appears to be steady, but it is changing all the time. And we know that. We know that electrons, atoms, everything is moving, everything is electricity and whatever. We know that from science, but we don't feel it because it doesn't seem like it unless we practice. And when we start to practice, we can look deeper. We can have insights into that. And also our concept of identity will change. And maybe this a little paradoxical, but we can be more authentic, because you were touching on the topic of authenticity, right? Am I being authentic when I'm putting that hat on, or is it just something that my mother, my father, my boss would like me to wear? Is it a true expression of how I'm feeling, or of, I think identity has a lot to do with values also, right? And you have a very strong foundation of values in Buddhist teachings. This is what I really like. It's not neutral. It says we need to be compassionate with ourselves and with all beings, and may all beings be happy and peaceful, because the Buddha said there is suffering, there is dissatisfaction. This is just the human condition, and it's a condition of life, of all living beings. And so because this is hard enough, we should cultivate positive feelings and a positive mindset towards ourselves and other beings, because that makes it easier, right? And that can help us also enjoy this life that is there. And so this also is a part of, when I speak about myself, of my Buddhist identity, or something that goes very well together with the values that I bring from my family, from my ancestors, whatever. And I found that reflected in Buddhist teachings. And so this melted and helped me have a very authentic expression of my spiritual practice or life,
Again, this also hits on some interesting points, because before I ventured upon this path, and I think a number of other people would also agree, this sense that spirituality is okay, not random, but completely, you can't touch it. It's not tangible. It has nothing to do with my reality and so on. And yet the actual things that I learned, and I continue to learn, is that's completely the opposite. This sense of spirituality seeks to put you more into contact with who you are, but also reality, understanding reality, being able to identify reality. We cannot do that without spirituality, or without accessing our spiritual selves.
Amen.
Yeah, and that's just, that for me was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'd never thought of it in that way,
But the way you just put it into words was fabulous. I think that was very, very well said.
I'm happy I recorded it. Cool.
And I think maybe that's a good point to wrap it up, because we could go on for hours and hours and maybe enjoy ourselves, but maybe the listeners would be completely, I don't know, confused and in an identity crisis, which is also a big chance, by the way, like not to believe I am this, I am that, but to say, okay, like, who am I? Maybe it's the question is very helpful, just to explore life and this mind that we have been giving, and this space, inner space, more. So I wish us all a small, nice identity crisis to be able to practice and to grow.
That's a good place to end it. I'm always happy, Lilek, to learn from you. Yeah, it's actually nice to start contributing too. So thank you again for your time too.
Thanks for your challenging topics and questions.
Mike. Two and a mic.